Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you so much for joining us tonight for the 23rd Annual Alexander Hamilton Award Ceremony. We celebrate Alexander Hamilton for his courage, tenacity, and strategic acumen, which proved indispensable in the fight for American independence. But we also celebrate him for his vision for the American future. In an agrarian age, Hamilton believed in the enormous potential for urban life. He dreamed of great cities teeming with ambitious strivers and of innovative industries that would make America the most prosperous and powerful republic the world has ever known. The Hamilton Award recognizes distinguished citizens who've helped make his dream a reality. That is why we're so delighted to be honoring Cliff Asness and Senator Tom Cotton, both of whom have devoted their considerable talents to advancing economic opportunity, individual liberty, and the rule of law in America and its great cities. Those of us gathered here tonight come from many different walks of life, and we trace our ancestors to different corners of the world. But we share something deeply important. We understand that the freedoms we enjoy as Americans are fragile, that they rest on cultural and constitutional foundations that make civil discourse, serious intellectual inquiry, and entrepreneurial achievement possible. MI exists to protect and strengthen these foundations, even as a rising chorus of critics seeks to tear them down. In the course of their invaluable work, our scholars have faced intimidation, censorship, and even threats of violence. MI exists to ensure that these fearless women and men, whom I'm privileged to work alongside, will never be silenced. And that brings me to all of you in this room. None of what we do would be possible without your friendship and support. Please know how grateful we are to have you standing with us. It is in that spirit that I'd like to first recognize our trustees, the pillars of the Manhattan Institute, who are with us here tonight. Ann Charters, Tony Coles, Kathy Crow, Ravenel Curry, Michael Fedak, Ken Gilman, our Chairman Emeritus, Roger Hertog, Michael Kaufman, Roger Kimball, Joe Crystal, Susie Leibovitz-Edelman, Nick O'Neill, Russell Penoyer, Robert Rosencrantz, Nathan St. Amand, and Paul Singer. I would also like to recognize our presenter, patron, and benefactor sponsors, whose immense generosity has made this evening such a success. Laurel and Cliff Asness, Ann and Tom Charters, Marilyn and Michael Fedak, Michael Kaufman, Paul Singer, Ravenel Curry, the O'Neill Family Foundation, Warren Stevens, David and Marta Black, Kathy and Harlan Crow, Timothy Dalton Jr. and Julie Dalton, David Harrow and Jay Frankie, Daniel S. Loeb, and Rupert Murdoch. Please join me in giving them a round of applause. With your steadfast support, MI is working hard to meet the most urgent policy challenges of our time, from the crisis of violence and disorder in cities across the country, to the reckless fiscal and monetary policies that endanger our nation's economic future, to the rise of identity politics and the threat it represents to individual liberty and the pursuit of excellence. MI scholars and journalists are at the forefront of these debates. We are exposing the many failures of the status quo and offering pragmatic, impactful policy solutions that will help renew the promise of American life. And finally, I am honored to introduce the chairman of the MI Board of Trustees, Paul Singer. A masterful investor in financial markets, Paul is also renowned as a far-sighted investor in the institutions, values, and intellectual talent that undergird free societies at home and abroad. His thoughtful and principled leadership has been central to the Institute's success. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our chairman, Mr. Paul Singer.
Thank you, Reihan, for that kind introduction. And good evening and welcome to the 23rd Annual Alexander Hamilton Award Dinner of the Manhattan Institute. First, I'm proud to announce that we've raised for this event $3.8 million. Which is especially welcomed because it's the largest fundraising for this event in our history, and I think that it bespeaks either one of two things: either firm commitment to the cause and the message and the issues addressed by the Manhattan Institute, or a feeling of deep desperation at the ideological drift in much of what passes for the intelligentsia in the United States. Seriously, I'm grateful, we are grateful that the room is filled with patriotic and generous supporters. Thank you so much. This success would not have been possible without Reihan and Ilana's spirited leadership, which is combined to make MI the most interesting and impactful think tank in America today. Thank you, Reihan and Ilana. Formal intros to follow, but I want to spend a few words talking about our honorees tonight. Our friends Cliff Asness, founder of AQR Capital Management, and Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas. Like so many investors, I eagerly read everything Cliff writes about markets and the economy. It's all sensible and delivered with wit and a puzzled tone, wondering why there is so much muddled thinking around those issues in the government and in the commentariat. Cliff is spectacularly successful, but also humble, introspective, and thoughtful. Quite a combo for a cranky and brilliant guy. I also read everything Cliff writes about politics. He's often the first to call out fads and spot trends, trendy and overrated ideas and policymakers. Most importantly for us, Cliff is a dear friend of liberty, free markets, and free speech. These convictions, along with his generosity and commitment to defending them, make him a perfect honoree for the Manhattan Institute. We're fortunate to have his friendship. Thank you for all you do, Cliff. Our other honoree tonight is reported to have caused, with just one solitary and common sense op-ed, more canceled New York Times subscriptions than on an hourly basis than ever in the... Senator, they either really love you or really hate the New York Times. Perhaps a little of both. Senator Cotton is an infantry officer who served in Iraq and Afghanistan, a former congressman and a current second-term senator. He also spent some time at Harvard, holding his tongue during innumerable left-wing harangues by classmates and professors. That's where he prepared for his Hamilton Award acceptance speech by writing a thesis on the Federalist Papers. In Washington, Senator Cotton advocates the rule of law, the rights of the people, and the security of the nation. And when he speaks, colleagues pay attention. The rest of us recognize him as the sort of thoughtful, accomplished citizen that the founders had in mind for public service. Both of our award recipients are adept at exposing nonsense for what it is, and at stating the obvious, even when it's unfashionable to do so. These days, we're not supposed to question any of the new progressive orthodoxy, but if you're not willing to conform to the new rules, I have some good news. You're in the right place, and you have a fearless ally in the Manhattan Institute. When you support MI, you're supporting and investing in the power of reasoned argument over slogans and groupthink. You're placing a bet on clear thinking, common sense, and hard work on the ground can prevail. Our scholars go to where the policies are made. They shape debates in the media, make their case to legislators, work with city officials. They are focused, rigorous, and relentless. On our side, there is no better game in town than MI for policy and impact. Reihan is built on the great foundation of the Larry Moen years, a simply fabulous group of young activists and thinkers who wake up every single day determined to shatter the rancid stew of the new craziness, the wokeness that seeks to tear down all that we hold dear, including the magnificent meritocracy, which has served such an important role in keeping America great. Occasionally, when I have the podium, I observe that the entire right-of-center population of New York City was in the room. It generally gets a laugh, not really because of my comedic skills, but because of the basic truth of it. We laugh ruefully because we're amazed that the greatest city in the world is suffused with thinking that became obsolete when Mao Zedong went out of power and fashion. However, I'm amending my thinking about the numerical limits of this room. The revolt against woke ideology goes far beyond this room. In fact, I believe that the resistance to woke ideology goes far and wide, but is mostly just afraid to speak up. Well, MI and its brilliant and articulate scholars are perfectly positioned to educate and gather the opposition into an unstoppable counter-revolution. I am pleased to be part of that counter-revolution and associated with this great institution. Nowhere will you find sensible policy solutions better stated than in the City Journal. That seems to be the opinion of the million or so regular readers of City Journal every month. That means that a growing audience reads the terrific work of scholars like Heather McDonald, Chris Rufo, Ilya Shapiro, Jim Copeland, and so many others. In addition to our terrific writers, scholars, and staff, we're also fortunate to have a dedicated group of trustees. I want to especially thank Michael Fedak, our longstanding vice chair. Michael will be stepping down from this role this year. He's been an indispensable advisor to MI and a consistent champion of our work. He and Marilyn were early supporters of the Adam Smith Society, which became one of the Institute's most resounding successes due to their generosity and wisdom. Michael, I look forward to continuing our work together on the board. Fellow trustee Ann Charters has graciously agreed to take over the reins as vice chair. I'm so grateful to have Ann and Michael, as well as Chair Emeritus Roger Hertog, as reliable allies and thought partners. In this time of madness, I feel comforted to be with our two honorees, our wonderful board, and all of you. Thank you all for coming.
Good evening. I'm so pleased to be celebrating with all of you tonight, and I share Paul and Reihan's deep gratitude for your support. As you just saw, throughout MI's history, our scholars have developed innovative, practical solutions for our cities, our schools, and our country. I'd like to recognize the immensely talented team at MI and City Journal on whom we are so fortunate to rely. MI is blessed with truly singular talent in our scholars and journalists, And behind the scenes, our editorial, external affairs, communications, marketing, and event staff work around the clock to maximize our impact on the public discourse and to turn our reporting and scholarship into tangible policy changes, not only in Washington, but at all levels, and especially in our cities. Here in New York, we have witnessed tragic episodes that illustrate the deterioration of public order and safety. Like many of you, I am a native New Yorker committed to the future of this great city. And as a parent, I want to be sure that my daughter enjoys the opportunities that I did growing up here. Our work at MI aims at the rebirth of America's cities, and I am proud to be a part of it. In this perilous moment, MI and City Journal are uniquely positioned to shape the future of New York and other cities by informing public debate with groundbreaking reporting, building coalitions of activists, and providing policymakers with evidence-based solutions on the difficult issues facing urban America. Your support allows us to inject pragmatic solutions and deep analysis into our national discourse. For those who might be interested in making a donation to MI tonight to support this work, you'll find donation cards you can fill out at your tables that you can place in the boxes, which our team members will collect at the end of the evening. Your support magnifies our impact and is deeply appreciated. Please enjoy your dinner. Our program will resume at 8:30 with remarks from tonight's honorees. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. You in the tux, please take your seat. So I have a problem. I was told that this was going to be the Cliff Asness roast. And then Reihan came up to me and said that's not the case. I'm actually here just to introduce Cliff as a recipient of the Alexander Hamilton Award, which is nice too, I guess. But it means I have to kill a whole bunch of material about that great lavish vacation that Cliff took me and Brett Kavanaugh on. Too soon? There are a lot of important differences between Wall Street and Washington. It's been said that the most dangerous place in DC is to get caught between, say, Adam Schiff or Ted Cruz and a TV camera. On Wall Street, the most dangerous place to get caught is between Cliff and a computer monitor, particularly when those stupid numbers go the wrong way. So now, for those of you who don't get the reference, in May of 2009, the Wall Street Journal, you may have heard of it, profiled Cliff in a piece called "Hedge Fund King is Forced to Regroup." Now, I should say, this was not a great time for Cliff. The Rangers were struggling. Michael Jackson died. Also, the financial markets were, to paraphrase George Costanza, they were angry those days, like an old man trying to send back soup at a deli. And Cliff was angry too, which brings me back to this Journal story. The story recounted the firm's troubles, and then the Wall Street Journal reported, quote, later that year, Mr. Asness frequently erupted in his office, smashing computer screens in anger, according to people familiar with the matter. True story, you can look it up. But Cliff took exception to this coverage. Cliff is a man who takes exceptions. He wrote a letter to the Journal, I quote in full, "In your otherwise fine and fair chronicle of my rough last 1 or 2 years, you state that I was occasionally so mad I was, quote, smashing computer screens in anger, and that I confirmed this tale. True, but misleading. It happened only 3 times, and on each occasion, the computer screen deserved it." It's got to be driving Cliff crazy that I'm getting applause for his jokes. Nevertheless, the story stuck. And look, that's just like the fake news media, right? You know, you punch just 3 disrespectful computer monitors, and it follows you around wherever you go. In fact, big tech is in on it too. When I was preparing for tonight, I typed into the Google search engine Clifford Asness, And the second immediate autofill was Punch's monitor. The first was Cliff Asness Twitter. Now, if you follow Cliff on Twitter, you understand why. Cliff's Twitter account is what you might expect from a man who takes exceptions. I sometimes imagine those poor, I was about to say, I sometimes imagine those poor people in the AQR communications team, chain-smoking cigarettes and white-knuckling it until Cliff puts down his phone at night. I could spend the rest of the evening simply reading his exchanges with Nassim Taleb, and all of you would find that worthy of the price of the meal tonight. I'd say that those debates harken back to earlier epic intellectual battles. William F. Buckley versus Gore Vidal, Jean-Paul Sartre versus Albert Camus, Godzilla versus Monster Zero. But I suspect that Cliff would take exception. He'd probably say it was more like a debate between a sane person and Nassim Taleb. The truth is that Cliff is actually not a rageaholic, though he is occasionally profane. One can only imagine how much more profane he'd be if he hadn't married a pastor's daughter from Nebraska. No, but seriously, Laurel Asness is conceivably the nicest person in the world. Mr. Rogers apparently once remarked, quote, "It must be frickin' exhausting being that nice all the time." Anyway, I've only actually seen Cliff really lose his temper once. It was when the London Metals Exchange outrageously and arbitrarily voided billions in nickel deals. I know we all remember that dark day. It wasn't so much because he lost money, he might have, I don't know. It certainly wasn't why he was mad. It enraged him because Cliff loves markets. And rig markets offend him the way Napoleon offended the Jesuits when he used their churches as stables. That's the thing about Cliff. He's a true believer. He sincerely believes that freedom, especially economic freedom, isn't just a superior means of generating growth or distributing resources. He believes it's morally superior to the alternatives. He's also one of the most intellectually honest people I've ever met. He's perfectly happy to say, "I don't know," when he doesn't know something. But when he does know, he still shows his work. And I don't mean the occasional brilliant op-ed in the Wall Street Journal. He is constantly putting out academic papers full of squiggly lines and Greek letters and other witchcraft, explaining why he takes his positions, in every sense of the word. In the annals of intellectual history, I'm hard-pressed to think of anyone who more truly and consistently put their money where their mouth is than Cliff Asness. Unsurprisingly, that goes for his philanthropy as well. Of course, Cliff is an active supporter of the Manhattan Institute and the Adam Smith Society. He loves this place dearly. He talks about it all the time. And the Manhattan Institute, with the help of people like Cliff, has basically become an intellectual green zone in an otherwise hostile, occupied city. But all of this flows from the fact that Cliff Asness knows who he is. He's a Jewish kid born in Queens, raised in Long Island. It may surprise some of you to know that someone so incandescently bald had one of the most impressive Jew-fros in all of Nassau County. I have a picture on my phone. Come to me afterwards, I'll show you. And keep in mind, these were in the days when Nassau County was to Jew-fros what like Cuba was to pitchers. It was like impressive. Anyway, Cliff is still that kid from Long Island, and he makes no apologies for it. He likes hockey and collecting comic books and spending time with his wonderful family. I could list all the awards and accomplishments, but the truth is he deserves the highest compliment I can give. He is truly a mensch. If he hadn't gone into finance and become wildly successful at it, I think he would have ended up as the exact same guy, albeit with fewer toys. He might even have ended up working at some place like the Manhattan Institute. He talks about it all the time, that was sort of the plan. He might even have been working here, writing brilliantly about free markets and the like, though I suspect that Reihan would make him pay for those monitors. Cliff Asness is not just a man who takes exceptions. He is an exceptional man, and it is my profound honor and privilege to present or to introduce Cliff Asness for the 2023 Alexander Hamilton Award.
Thank you, Jonah. I may need to scrap some of my speech here just to rebut. The one thing I will not rebut is that my wife Laurel is the nicest person in the world. Though Jonah was actually kind because he didn't add the obvious rejoinder. She has to be. He also nailed it when he talked about what I might want to do if I did it all over. For my next career, I basically want to be Jonah. I mean, let's be real. I want to make hedge fund money. But doing Jonah's kind of work. I'm going to update my LinkedIn profile and see what's out there. Before I felt the need to rebut Jonah, I was going to start by apologizing to those who had this land before us. Of course, I refer to the Dutch. So I promise most of my fire will be directed at the left, but a little bit to the right to start, okay? No one panic. I bring greetings from, as the populist right would call us, the rootless, cosmopolitan, globalist donor class. People who would sell our souls to China for some cheap crapola to sell. Oh, and according to them, we're rhinos for believing in things conservatives, classical liberals, and libertarians have believed in for hundreds of years, rather than obeisance to one rather dodgy man. If they keep clapping, can I go over my time? As a famous Sicilian once almost said, that word rhino, I don't think it means what they think it means. I also would like to say hi to the progressive left from, as they would call us, our little band of Bond villain oligarch plutocrats, also tagged as from the much despised donor class, and whom they also believe would sell the country to China, this time for a slightly lower capital gains rate. If you've noticed some overlap in my two greetings, you'll also notice that horseshoe theory is not just a river in Egypt. That doesn't work at all, by the way, but I liked it. I mean, among other things, they agree beyond all logic and evidence that the American worker is in rapid decline. They're not. That we need an industrial policy that would make Lester Thoreau blush, and that share purchases are the devil's handmaiden. May God save us from populist socialists of any party affiliation. Anyway, it's wonderful to be here tonight as we fet late-stage capitalism. Nope, I don't know what those words mean either. But this is important. Neither do they. It's one of those modern phrases whose purpose is almost entirely not to be understandable, but to convey a fact-free feeling. Though if by late-stage capitalism they mean the most prosperous the world has ever been for the most people, then, okay, sign me up. Mr. Gigot, who actually probably made the decision to run that insane letter of mine 15 years ago, will tell you that there's an editorial by Graham and Schlaze in today's Wall Street Journal if you want to see that these kind of made up things about Gilded Ages and whatnot have been going on for quite a while. Now, if I can make some more serious comments, I'm going to spend some more time on this donor class thing. I'm going to defend some of my peeps. The cynicism directed at them from both, how do I put this politely, ass ends of this horseshoe is just at odds with what I see. Here are some thoughts on the MI donor class and the Manhattan Institute in general that I might title, What I Saw at the Counter-Revolution. People familiar to MI and familiar to this room, like Paul Singer, a political and philanthropic mentor to me, John Paulson, Ken Griffin, Dan Loeb, Ken Langone, Ravenel Curry, Stan Druckenmiller, the Hertogs, the Fedoks, the Crows, and many of you in the audience today, at whatever scale you can help, are to the best of my poor abilities to discern, truly not here so that we can import some cheap goods from China or even to lower our personal tax rates. No, that's why we moved to Florida. In fact, to a person, I'm guessing you have spent more dollars attempting to better society than it would ever be possible to recoup, even from a plutocrat-friendly administration. Those that think the donor class are in it for the money are also really just saying that this same donor class are terribly bad investors. I'm sorry, but that dog just won't hunt. Yes, that was indeed my impression of Albert Brooks doing an impression of Ann Richards. That had levels, you had to know the history there. But I told you my balance was only for the beginning. Here's a situation where the horseshoe doesn't come around. There is no equivalence, and I'll be doing some whining for the donor class now, just so you know. There's no equivalence between the left and right when it comes to their respective donor classes and the establishment's treatment of them. The left's own donor class is generally esteemed by the dominant institutions of our time, whose bought and sold purpose is, in fact, to esteem them. Being a donor to the left usually means applause and approbation. Okay, sometimes people on the right give it to that Soros guy. But otherwise, I'm pretty sure I'm right about this. In contrast, their equivalents on the right are regularly castigated as robber barons, who, for instance, support charter schools only to reap massive profits down the road when they go public. By the way, there are no profits to donors down the road, and they are already public. But I digress. I mean, no leftist of the pundit or donor class, to the best of my knowledge, has ever had to do the equivalent of declaring, my friend Harlan Crow does not love and worship totalitarianism. He doesn't. He's here tonight, I promise you. Nope. The worst they've had to say from the left is no comment as to why they made a few dozen visits to Epstein Island or got a kickback to the big guy. And no comment actually works for them. No comment is really effective when the journalist, and I hate people who use air quotes, it's the cheapest, most hackneyed thing, but you gotta for this, right? The hashtag journalists don't actually want to comment to begin with and are actually there to protect their target. I've always disliked got you questions, but I think I'm trying my level best not to get you questions, or even worse. The men and women of the MI donor class are, again, to the best of my abilities to tell, and I'm often in these meetings, except when the really big boys need the room, truly patriots that don't benefit, but take risks doing what they do. Rather than applause and opprobrium, no, approbation. I've been getting those words wrong my whole life. There shouldn't be two words that have that same pentameter that mean the exact opposite thing. I'm going to try this again then. Rather than applause and approbation, they often face odium and opprobrium, and sometimes even aggressively ample alliteration. Now, of course, that doesn't mean MI's donors are right about everything or agree amongst themselves about everything. But things you do when you're facing opprobrium just get you more street cred than things you do when your biggest risk are big applause. So I would venture just a few things that I have some confidence they and the MI community in general do agree upon. They do not obsess about their personal tax rates. They obsess about the country. They believe in the free enterprise system not because they want to become yet richer, but because they want everyone to become richer. They actually do understand that it's not their lives that will be much better in a better system. And amazingly, they don't have the ego to think free enterprise only works for themselves. They believe in merit, not because they've demonstrated it themselves, which many or even most or maybe all have, but because it's what makes civilization prosper. And because the merit that we're still allowed to acknowledge today is why we're not yet a dystopian hellscape best observed from Galt's Gulch. They believe in equality of opportunity, not as a defense against the left's accusations, but as a matter of civic religion and the noblest of goals. They believe in school choice, not because they hate unions, but because they love kids. And for that matter, they love teachers. They also realize education is what made their blessed lives possible. And yet again, they know they're not that special. Education can save anyone. They believe in free speech because, do I really need a reason for that one? Seems self-explanatory. They believe in keeping civil order not because they hate squeegee men and own window repair companies. That's another MI deep cut, by the way. But because they know a safe, fair, and well-policed city is important to everyone, but again, spectacularly so to those less fortunate than themselves. You know, when I do the quant presentations, nobody applauds during the various stages. They believe in constitutional government, not as a tool of plutocrat rule, but for what it is. A written down set of rules to be followed until amended, and yes, some of those amendments were damn important. They know that having these rules is the vital difference between a just, stable, and again, civil society versus being ruled by the ephemeral whims of men ultimately backed by guns. But now you may have been thinking I've forgotten about the Manhattan Institute. That's fair, but not remotely true. I say that a lot in my life. That's fair, but not true. I've been discussing them implicitly in almost every line so far. MI is not a monolith either, and I don't purport to speak for all our scholars and stakeholders, but I think what I've been talking about is pretty darn in line with the ethos here. The Manhattan Institute, only named that because the Manhattan Project was taken, has long been a voice of reason in New York City and in fact on national issues. They, in my humble opinion, stand for some pretty great things also. They stand for people of all walks of life being able to live in safety, to educate their children effectively, to prosper economically, and to live as free men and women with all the rights and obligations, successes and failures, and joys and pains that brings. And they fight. Paul talked about this, and I said, I'm still going to do this section anyway, even though he took it. They fight. The populist right, one of the few things I think they're kind of correct on is sometimes we need more fighters. That's going to piss off Jonah. They don't like me to give an inch to them. But sometimes we need more fighters, and sometimes we can be too pleased with our intellectual prowess to get our hands dirty. MI scholars do not generally have that problem. From Heather McDonald, who I definitely would not want to fight, to Glazer, to Jelinek, to Lowry, to Malanga, to Schrager, to Fryer, Riley, Shapiro, and Copeland. They fight. Say those last four with me. Fryer, Riley, Shapiro, and Copeland. That would be a great name for a law firm, would it not? Not as good as Archie Bunker's lawyers, the famous firm of Rabinowitz, and Rabinowitz. Archie described them, and I'm only quoting Norman Lear here, and I'm part of the tribe, so you can't cancel me for this. Archie described them as 7 savage Jews who won't leave a scrap on your bones. No, it's not that good a name, but it's pretty good. Obviously, that list of names that I pretended to rattle off, but of course I'd written down, is nowhere near exhaustive. I just picked a few whose work I love and left out too many others. In the immortal words of a Seinfeld episode, you're all winners. I actually mean it in this case. So our scholars are not just right and not just brilliant, but they're courageous, brilliant fighters for what's right. They run into the breach, not just once more, but again and again. And for that and much more, I thank them. Of course, I'd like to end by thanking not just them, but everyone at MI, from the same scholars I've already discussed, to those I couldn't mention, as to do so would take way more minutes than Reihan would give me, to Reihan himself and the team who makes it all happen, and even to, again, my fellow members of the donor class who support these efforts. I'll see you fellas at the next Naked Cavorting in the Woods, coming up in June. You know where. Thank you, MI. Thank you for this honor tonight. It is very special to me, but more so, thank you for giving me the opportunity to support you as you fight for prosperity, liberty, and civil society itself. Good night.
By the way, I'm not Cliff Asness. But good evening. I'm Roger Hertog, and let me extend my welcome to the 23rd Annual Alexander Hamilton Award Dinner. Tonight, we honor a man who would make Alexander Hamilton proud. Senator Tom Cotton is not only a man of great intellect, character, integrity, and courage, but most importantly, he uses his blessed gifts to benefit the country he loves. Let me share with you a couple of vignettes that will provide a deeper understanding of the man we honor tonight. Having grown up on a cattle farm in Dardanelle, Arkansas, God only knows where that is, and yet a cattle farm, where his beliefs were so commonplace that they needed no label, whereas his time spent at Harvard University was a great clash of ideas. Upon graduation as a columnist for the Crimson, the campus daily, Tom wrote a farewell to his readers. I've never sought to be loved. I wrote against sacred cows such as the cult of diversity, affirmative action, conspicuous compassion, radical participatory democracy. And to make matters worse, I was a conservative. After 6 years at Harvard, Tom escaped unloved but unscathed, having earned a BA in 3 years and then a law degree. He once reflected that the only way you could leave Harvard a conservative is if you came that way, if you entered with conservative beliefs. To pay off his education loans, Tom worked in many jobs, including at a DC law firm, a senior partner musing on the young lawyer's gifts, talents, and the great future he had with the firm. One day, in 2004, Tom came into his office and said he was thinking about leaving to join the Army. Astonished, the lawyer proceeded to give Tom some fatherly advice. The Army has plenty of lawyers, they don't need you. Tom replied, "Oh no, I'm not going to be a lawyer. I'm going to be in the infantry. and I want to become an airborne ranger. I want to lead troops in combat. Incredulous, this Harvard lawyer was thinking this guy would renounce the law for the Army. The senior partner asked Tom, "Have you talked to your mother about this decision?" The rest, as they say, is history. After being stationed in Iraq, fighting with the 101st Airborne Division, Tom was angered by an article in the arbiter of all the news that's fit to print. I think you know what comes after this. The New York Times. By revealing a secret Bush administration program. I remember reading it on the front page. Masking his rage and sarcasm, Tom wrote to the editor, "Congratulations on disclosing our government's highly classified anti-terrorist financing program. I apologize for not writing sooner, but I'm a lieutenant in the U.S. Army, and I've spent the last 4 days patrolling one of the most dangerous areas in Iraq. These terrorists we fight don't spring from the soil. They require financing to emplace bombs and mortars. You may think you've done a public service, but you've gravely endangered the lives of my soldiers and innocent Iraqis. This will not come as a shock to you, but the New York Times did not print that letter. But fortunately, a blog, Powerline, did. And Lieutenant Tom Cotton, in 2004, became an overnight hero to many Americans. His courage to speak his mind and stand up for his beliefs has echoed through the halls of the Senate in 2015. And last year, he put his thoughts and their philosophical underpinnings in a book about America. If you haven't read it, I urge you to buy it. You don't even have to read it. But first, buy it. Then read it. It's a great book. It's an important book. It's called Only the Strong: Reversing the Left's Plot to Sabotage American Power. Its thesis is that progressives over the last 100 years have deliberately thwarted America's freedom of action in world affairs because they don't trust it. They don't trust us. They don't believe in what we believe in. In it, he cites a stunning speech by Henry Cabot Lodge, then the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee during Woodrow Wilson's tenure. It's stunning not only because Lodge said it more than 100 years ago, because his inspired commentary is as piercing today as it was then. Listen to these words. You may call me selfish if you will, conservative or reactionary, or use any other harsh adjective you see fit to apply, said Lodge. But an American I was born, American I have remained all of my life. I can never be anything else but an American. And I must think of the United States first. And when I think of the United States first, I'm thinking about what is best for the world. And if the United States fails, the best hopes of mankind will fail with it. The question of America's role in the world continues to be one of the most consequential issues of our time. Senator Cotton's leadership has proven indispensable in this fight and is, he reminds us, only the strong can defend a great nation. I end as I began, on a personal note. It is said that every senator sees a president when he looks in the mirror. God forbid if this was ever Chuck Schumer, but that's a digression. But it is my sincere hope that the man Tom Cotton sees in the mirror will someday be president. But first, ladies and gentlemen, please stand in honor of the 23rd Alexander Hamilton Award Prize winner, Senator Tom Cotton.
Thank you all. Thank you all very much. Wow, thank you all very much for the warm welcome. And Roger, thank you for that very kind, one-of-a-kind introductions. I'm going to have to take you on the road after that. Roger, I'm grateful for your many years of friendship and support. I also want to recognize and thank your chairman, Paul Singer, for his inspirational leadership. And I want to thank Paul also for taking a flyer years ago on an unknown and unemployed veteran from Arkansas. And I want to thank your president, Reihan Salam, for building upon the Manhattan Institute's distinguished heritage for a new generation. And I want to add my congratulations to Cliff Asness. It's a true honor to share this evening as the recipient of the Hamilton Award with Cliff. I nearly didn't make it tonight, though. Believe it or not, I'm on jury duty in Little Rock. Seriously, I am. I'm not joking. I have to call the Pulaski County Courthouse each Monday morning to find out if they need jurors that week. They didn't today. I'll confess, I kind of hope I get called. I mean, anything to get away from Chuck Schumer. But I'm afraid if I do get called, I'll probably be struck from the pool anyway. I mean, if I show up for voir dire and the lawyer asks me to state my name for the record, I'll instinctively just yell, "Guilty!" Sorry, got overexcited there, Counselor Tom Cotton. But no, honestly, can you imagine me on a criminal jury? I'm just thinking of the questions we would send back as jurors to the judge from the jury room. Your Honor, we know the prosecutor charged manslaughter, but we think the facts prove out capital murder. Can we convict of that? And while we're at it, can we also skip the sentencing phase and go straight to the hanging? No, I suspect I'll never see the inside of a courtroom in Little Rock this summer. No criminal defense lawyer in Arkansas is eager to have me on their jury. No more eager than the New York Times is excited about having me back on their pages. By contrast, I am very happy and honored to be with you tonight. And I'm deeply honored to receive your Hamilton Award. I'm also grateful that Reihan moved this off of Broadway and canceled the rap and dance competition between Cliff Asness and me. I hear he does a mean version of Ice Ice Baby. Even after the hit musical, I do believe that Hamilton is one of our most underappreciated founders. From fighting alongside Washington to crafting the Constitution and campaigning for it in New York newspapers, to his famous reports on manufacturers and public finances. Hamilton did much to turn America into a modern, dynamic commercial republic. It's fitting that this Manhattan Institute Award bears his name here in his adopted hometown. For your scholars very much walk in Hamilton's footsteps, defending the free enterprise system, self-improvement, and national advancement through quality education, the rule of law, cultural sanity, and maybe standing out above all else, the Manhattan Institute's work to revitalize America's great cities. Hamilton himself is a champion of American cities. So am I. Regrettably, some conservatives today would write off our great cities. They mock their struggles. Now, don't get me wrong, Alvin Bragg and Lori Lightfoot and George Gascon richly deserve mockery. But our fellow citizens in New York and Chicago and Los Angeles deserve much, much better than these failed ideologues. The fine people of this city and Chicago and Los Angeles and San Francisco and so many other great American cities are suffering under the weight of disastrous politics. Schools are failing, infrastructure is crumbling, and businesses and families are fleeing. And underneath it all is a breakdown in public safety and order. And here again, the Manhattan Institute is leading the way, as it always has. And here again, you share Hamilton's concerns. He knew that public safety was the very first object and responsibility of any government. Without safety, there can be no education, no prosperity, no opportunity, no culture, no beauty. He even warned that if free government proved incapable of providing safety, then a people might abandon freedom sooner than they would tolerate unending fear and danger. Hamilton had no illusions about human nature. Men are ambitious, vindictive, and rapacious, he wrote. He understood that a fundamental duty of government is to restrain men's violent passions and establish public order. Such notions may seem quaint and outdated today to the progressive left, but their enduring truth is sadly seen every day on your city's streets and subways. Roger mentioned that I grew up on a farm. When I was a kid, my father and I had to bush hog the fields each summer. Now, for those who don't know, a bush hog is a large mower pulled behind a tractor. While my dad bush hogged the fields, I had to clear the fence rows that he couldn't reach. Believe me, this was dirty and unpleasant work. And you might ask, why did you cut the grass that your cattle grazed on? Why didn't you turn it into hay? And the answer is, we weren't cutting the grass. We were cutting the new growth of bushes and saplings because the jungle always wants to grow back. And the jungle will always grow back absent intervention. That's what we see happening in too many of America's cities today as progressive politicians elevate their warped ideology over tried and true policing and prosecutorial methods. George Soros-backed prosecutors simply refuse to enforce the law or even see a depraved criminal as their actual client instead of the law-abiding public. The results. In Philadelphia, murder is up 63%. In Baltimore, 60%. In New Orleans, 40%. In Houston, 71%. All since Soros-backed prosecutors took office. And the numbers are much worse for other crimes. Here in the Big Apple, you have not only a Soros-backed prosecutor, you have the ideologues in Albany who ended your cash bail system. The results. Murder is up 37%, robbery 30%, burglary 46%, and auto theft 150%. I would say that the residents of these and too many other cities are scared to walk out of their homes, but that would understate things when moms and grandmas fear stray bullets passing through the walls of their homes and striking a sleeping child. As I said earlier, the people of our great cities deserve so much better, and we should help give it to them. One urgent and simple step is to turn every single Soros prosecutor out of office. The people of San Francisco recalled theirs. Little Rock, sadly, has had her own struggles with crime, but it would have been worse if a Soros-backed candidate had won last year. I'm glad to say she didn't, in no small part because local leaders generously stepped forward to support a career prosecutor. And one of them was a Manhattan Institute trustee, Warren Stevens. Perhaps a few of you here tonight could replicate that model elsewhere. Another step is to return to the wisdom of the ancients, by which I mean the Manhattan Institute's work from 20 to 30 years ago. In most of our living memories, New York was viewed as dangerously unsafe and ungovernable. But tough, law and order leaders like Rudy Giuliani, Ray Kelly, and Bill Bratton, along with America's finest police force, turned it into one of the nation's safest cities. And they did so in part by implementing the common sense of the Manhattan Institute. If you stop squeegee men and fare jumpers, you don't just restore order, you also bust a lot of career criminals with outstanding warrants. If you stop suspicious persons on the street, question them, and frisk them, you drive gun-carrying criminals off the streets. If the police investigate and arrest quickly and prosecutors charge firmly and go to trial promptly, then criminals will fear the consequences. Again, these are common sense ideas about which the Manhattan Institute has written and for which it has advocated for decades. Why did so many abandon them? What happened? In some ways, we're a victim of our own success. Crime fell so dramatically in the 1990s and the 2000s that liberals began to claim that these methods were unnecessary, unduly harsh, and yes, of course, racist. Unfortunately, some Republicans got in on the act too, accepting the left's premises and passing misguided soft-on-crime laws like the First Step Act. This short-sighted way of thinking reminds me of an old story. After several motorists died on a dangerous mountain road, the village elders agreed to post a road sign. Danger, winding road ahead. Years passed with no more accidents. Then one night, a storm blew the sign away. One elder proposed to replace the sign, but another said, "Why would we pay for a new sign when there hasn't been an accident up there for years?" The Manhattan Institute didn't merely post the proverbial sign decades ago, but also pleaded to keep the sign up, even when it hasn't been fashionable to do so. Too many politicians didn't heed your warnings. Now, too many of our cities, once again, seem dangerous and ungovernable. Yet we know that's not the case from experience. We've seen streets, subways, and parks reclaimed from criminals. We've done it before, so we can do it again. And I'm confident, as it was before, so it will be again soon. The Manhattan Institute will again be leading the way. Thank you all. God bless you. God bless the United States of America.
Thank you and congratulations to our honorees, Cliff Asness and Senator Tom Cotton, for giving us an opportunity to celebrate their prodigious accomplishments, and to Jonah Goldberg and Roger Hertog for their kind introductions. I'd like to thank all of my colleagues on our development team for their hard work and dedication. Andrew Law, Emily Daniels, Saga Lislow, Paul Shakeshaft, Ashley Schultz, Maya DeBello, Madeline Reed, and Susanna Ragusa. And thank you to our events team and everyone else who worked so tirelessly to make this such a special night in the life of the Institute, especially Ilana Golant, Michelle Jacob, Olivia Bayonne, Eli Hickson, Pat Burke, Aaron Ricks, and Ben Burney. And thank all of you for being here and for investing in the ideas that have made our country prosperous, safe, and free. Investing in ideas is unusual, it's contrarian, it's not something that everyone does, but it is vital, it is essential, and I'm enormously grateful to you for doing that, for believing in us, for your friendship. The bar will stay open until 10:30, and you're very welcome to stay with us. Try not to get too sloppy. Thanks very much, everyone. Good night.